Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to Filibuster here on the Nerd Party Network. Welcome to episode 199 and our penultimate episode of the year. In this episode we're going to look back on our 52 Films by Women challenge that comes to an end next week, and to do that with me as always is Dallas. How are you?
I'm very well. Yeah, yourself?
Yeah, good. Yeah, 199. It's going to be nice to hit 200. Well, we're going to take next week off because that's Wednesday is a Christmas day, and no one is interested in hearing our ramblings, I'm sure, on Christmas Day. So we'll be back the following week before then to close out the year and sort of kick off 200 odd episodes. So yeah, a bit of a landmark episode in a way.
Absolutely. 199 not out, as they would say in cricket.
Absolutely, and because we're Scottish, we will wipe the cricket reference from the books there. But before we dive into sort of our 52 films by women kind of reflections and look back, I was curious, Dallas, we haven't done this in a little while. What's kind of caught your eye that you've watched recently that's worth just chatting about? I know we've seen some things that I think we'll probably keep on sort of the back burner for a future episode, but what's worth having a chat about now?
Well, one of the things I don't know if it's worth having a chat about, but I did pass some time this weekend by watching the latest Michael Bay film on Netflix, of all things, Six Underground, which is essentially Ocean's 11, but with a lot more guns and taking out of terrorists, as Ryan Reynolds puts together a group of vigilantes and ex-special forces soldiers in order to basically take out dictators and stuff. And of course, as it's a Michael Bay film, it's done with an incredibly stylized way, with lots of blood, car chases, guns, women in tight clothing, and all sorts. Just exactly what you would expect, but because he's basically been given free rein by Netflix, imagine it dialed up to 11. And you this film starts off with a 20-minute car chase, which I think the record for car chases in terms of number of cars destroyed, I think, is still like the Blues Brothers, which manages to destroy about 80 or 90 odd in like one sequence, and this tries to do that in the first 20 minutes, and yeah, I mean, it doesn't really let up from that point on. And if you're a fan of Michael Bay, it'll probably be the greatest film ever. If you're not, I don't think it'll change your mind. But is it mindless entertainment for a weekend? Yes, it certainly is.
Yeah, I caught the first 20 minutes of this, actually, Dallas. I walked in on my girlfriend watching it the other day. I'm sure there's worse situations you could walk in on someone doing, but we kind of sat down, and I was kind of surprised to see her watching a Michael Bay movie, but her attention didn't last sort of beyond the 20-minute marker, and I was too busy sort of reading a graphic novel at the time, so we haven't really got beyond that 20 minutes, but if that's the sort of showcase of the movie, it failed to grip either of us personally.
Yeah, no, I think it's like it's one of those litmus tests. I think it's like if you're enjoying it after that point, you'll probably have a great time. If it's not doing anything for you, that's the great thing about Netflix. It is there's plenty more to choose from, and you can always skip. And according to, I think, Netflix, when they were talking about The Irishman, as long as you don't watch over 70% of the film, it won't really count towards their watch list. So, in terms of viewing figures, apparently it was, if you watch 70% of The Watchmen, they counted it as a full watch in order to bump up their numbers. So thankfully, you will not have contributed to Michael Bay's next movie then.
Perfect. Well, one film I caught recently that really touched me was Love, Antosha. So I don't know if you're familiar with this one, Dallas, but Anton Yelchin was an actor I really adored for his kind of work in Star Trek, Green Room, Like Crazy, and several other kind of indie films. And I thought I kind of knew him pretty well from sort of a religious follower of Star Trek behind the scenes documentaries, and I really liked sort of the content he was putting out. But this documentary sort of filmed, kind of touches on sort of Anton Yelchin, the person, and his career, and a lot of things I didn't really know about his health, and how much of an achievement he made, before he had passed away. So it interviews his family, collaborators from films like Green Room to Star Trek, everyone in between, Kristen Stewart, who he had dated at one point when they were a bit younger. So many, and they kind of chart his career, and it was a really touching film. It's 99 cents to rent this week on iTunes, and I'd really encourage people that haven't seen it to really dive into it. It was one of these films that I really enjoyed learning about sort of his photography quite a bit. He had a perverted in the best possible sense eye, and I think it was really great to learn about what made him such a special talent and why we would watch him on the screen and be really taken in with him. So definitely a documentary that I really loved, and I don't know if you're new to Anton Yelchin if it would have the same impact, but if you were a fan of his career and his him as an individual, I think it will leave quite a bit of a misty eye at the end.
Yeah, no, it sounds really interesting. Yeah, I've been a fan. I love Like Crazy. I think it's one of those really sort of underrated films of the last sort of decade or so. I think people really need to get on and check that out, and hopefully this documentary will sort of bring people to that. But yeah, no, he was a really enjoyable presence on, like you say, Alexa Green Room, and he had probably the most difficult job in the Star Trek reboots, I think, because the character of Chekhov could have gone either way, and I think what he did it really well, and sort of really made a really sort of grounded, believable character in that, and didn't go the other way with it, with the over the top ridiculous accent and stuff like that. So all credit to him for that, I think.
So is there anything else you've caught lately that's worth chatting about, Dallas?
Well, as the network's number one WWE fan, of course I would have had to have checked out Jumanji: The Next Level, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and it is more of the same but slightly tweaked in that this was a surprise smash hit a couple of years ago. It surprised me how actually good and enjoyable it was. I don't think anyone was ever crying out for another Jumanji movie, especially following Robin Williams' passing. But they did a great job with this by setting it inside a computer game, and the teenagers go into these avatars of the bodies. And now, the new premise of the movie is that happens again. They go back into the game, but this time it's everyone's switched around, and they happen to have one of the guy's grandfathers, played by Danny DeVito, who ends up in The Rock, and Danny Glover ends up in Kevin Hart, which allows for a lot more comedy this time round. And it's not as good as the original. The freshness has gone slightly, but I would have to say I am keen to see where it goes in the inevitable third film, given the mid-credit sting, which I think will lend a sort of Last Action Hero vibe to it, and that's all I'm going to say on that one if you haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I definitely didn't really enjoy this film, to be honest. It was part of like the middle part of a triple bill I went to see on Sunday, so I revisited Knives Out, went to see Jumanji in the middle, and then ended on Black Christmas. I enjoyed the previous...
Diminishing returns.
Yeah, I enjoyed the previous Jumanji sequel, but this one I really didn't enjoy at all. It felt very repetitive. It didn't seem to bring anything new. I mean, the highlight of the film for me was people putting on sort of that Boston accent, I think Danny DeVito has, or is it Philadelphia? I'm not too sure. That was kind of funny, but there was very little else that was brought new to the film, and I thought it was a real missed opportunity. I thought it was quite boring, to be honest. A bit of a disappointment after it made me believe again after the previous one.
Yeah, no, I mean it is, I guess, like a video game. It is, slightly repetitive, and that they've tried to build out to a newer world, but I think some of the freshness has gone with the sort of people in these bodies and stuff like that. But I think they could turn it around for the third one. But there was another. I think some of the finest sort of comedy acting I've seen this year is not actually Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson playing Danny DeVito, but another character playing Danny DeVito, and I thought that person was very good as well. Just the facial mannerisms and everything I thought were fantastic towards the end. Yeah,
so one film I think I'm a bit late to, I know it's been out for a wee while on digital and download, etc., was Crawl. So obviously this is a story about sort of a young girl. She's hunting down her dad, who has kind of got himself trapped in the basement during sort of a hurricane flood in Florida. So perils of global warming kind of have been taken to a new level, and all these crocodiles come in and start to try and attack them and kill people. So I was a bit late to this one. and yeah, I was kind of a bit frustrated I maybe missed this one at the cinema, to be honest. It was kind of, I like Kea Scodelario. I can never pronounce her name. I mean, I've liked her since Skins, and I liked her in Moon and various other things, and I've yet to be able to pronounce that last name. But yeah, I found it to be a really sort of enjoyable romp, to be honest. It was quite fun to see how much kind of things they could do with a crocodile in the water, and how you could get crocodiles upstairs, downstairs. It was a good kind of way to spend a sort of Sunday afternoon if you weren't wanting to watch kind of Jumanji.
Yeah, no, I think this is one which actually, I think I mentioned it earlier on this year because I saw it when it came out. I think it was one of the unlimited secret screenings, and it was really enjoyable. And it was a way that it could get very repetitive very fast, in that she's stuck in the house in this basement with a crocodile, and there's only how many ways is she going to figure out how to get away from the crocodile, and then the crocodile comes back. But I think it had enough inventiveness and variation, and I think the lead performance by her as well was gripping enough that it really sort of worked. And it becomes ultra violent at times. It's got a bit of humor in there as well, but it's just one of those old school sort of monster movies that I think is executed well enough that sometimes you just need a bit of brainless, mindless, actiony horror, and I think it delivered quite well in terms of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, one to check out, though I have a feeling everyone's checked it out but me. But so we'll kind of dive into today's subject. So unfortunately we don't have Kim with us today, so I'm going to kind of pitch it in this certain way, that why would you want to hear two guys talk about the films by women? Well, good question, you may ask. And the tenuous thing is, we are the kind of demographic that isn't kind of probably doing enough to support these films and go along to see these films. And what can we do to make things better? Can we preach to our fellow like-minded white men to kind of improve the kind of output of film that they're watching? And I want to kind of think about sort of why we did the challenge, what we learned, and why other people should do it. So we'll kind of go all the way back to January. I think it was like a few weeks into January, and I was like, Dallas, I did it last year where I tried to do 52 films by women, and I ended up on 57. Why don't we do sort of like a weekly thing on the podcast where we recommend a film, whether it's the cinema, Netflix, somewhere, try and kind of do our bit to kind of contribute to the kind of percentage of people checking out these films, and make it something that people can do. So when I kind of pitched this idea to you, what was your honest reaction to it? And I that makes it sound like I'm front loading it. Like, come on, Dallas, what was your real honest reaction as it? But what did you think of it?
I watched, sort of kept track of your challenge last year and was very impressed. My initial thought was there was slight hesitance in that if I restricted myself fully to what was available in the cinemas, I would be in trouble. And if especially just new releases in the cinema, I would be like, okay, how am I going to get to 52 here? But thankfully, with sort of streaming services and stuff like that, and obviously film festivals are a huge thing if you want to do a challenge like this. But I was happy to take on the challenge, and I have to say that I've watched a lot of movies this year that I probably would not have watched otherwise. I've actively sought out on Netflix. Thankfully, at the beginning of the year, they had one of the sort of subheadings of movies directed by women, so you could easily find out what they've got on there. I'll find myself sort of going on to the likes of, when you get your film festival brochures through, instead of just looking for things that sound like you want them, I'm now looking through to see who it's directed by and stuff like that. So it certainly helped to widen my film going output, and I'm really glad I've done it. I think I'm up to around about 70 at the moment. I think you're up close to about 100, and I know someone else we know, Ross, I think he's about hit the 100 mark as well on this. He sort of keeps a running tally on Twitter that I normally see, so there is people out there, but unfortunately we're in the minority perhaps. We certainly could have maybe addressed the gender imbalance of the Golden Globes this year again if we'd been part of the Hollywood Foreign Press, because they certainly seem to forget that women had directed anything this year. I saw a great thing on Twitter. What was it? Is it the Billy Eichner Billy on the Street thing, and there's like a clip of like him going up to this woman and basically just saying, for $1, name a woman, name a woman, name a woman, and she's like, I can't. And it's just like Golden Globes jury, and it's just like, yeah, they just seem to forget. It's like you've got. I mean, they also seem to forget that, you know, Marriage Story, one of the best films of the year. Apparently, that wasn't directed by anyone either, because you know, Noah Baumbach didn't get a nomination either. So, you know, sometimes it's. I mean, Golden Globes, we all know, is a bit of a sycophantic love-in. I mean, that's why Cats has got a couple of nominations just to get the people from there. But, you know, they really need to start taking a long, hard look at themselves and sort of widening their horizons. I mean, the Hollywood Foreign Press, you know, they should be looking at the whole world of films, and that's even before we get into the foreign language film category, where there was a bit of a hoo-ha as well.
Yeah, I mean, one thing for me, I suppose I took the challenge. You mentioned our friend Ross. He was the one that inspired me to do this, because I remember it was sort of like the middle of last year, I think just after the Edinburgh Film Festival, and I was like, I wonder how many films by women I've actually watched so far this year. And I think I was sort of maybe on like 15 or something like that, you know, which wasn't too bad, kind of relatively speaking, for sort of like maybe just shy of halfway through the year when you think of the output that's easily accessible. And I sort of decided, you know what, I'm going to push on, give myself a bit of a challenge. And I kind of find it quite helpful because, as you mentioned there, it's good for looking at film festival brochures and thinking, right, what am I going to check out? Or sometimes when you're at a film festival, you've got 3 films competing, or you're on Netflix and you have the choice of hundreds and hundreds of films, or you're going into the iTunes rental store and you're like, right, what am I going to pick? We're overwhelmed with choice, and sometimes I find this is a way to kind of focus it down a little bit. You know, right, what's a film by a woman that I can check out, give a fair shot to, try something new, kind of come out of my maybe comfort zone in terms of going for maybe something that's a bit usual and predictable, which will probably most likely end up being directed by a man. And it kind of makes it a bit more fun to try and go to festivals and to go, right, what am I going to watch now? What's going to be that one? And it helps you discover some films that you maybe hadn't any intention of seeing and you become pleasantly surprised by. Maybe you go take a chance on a film and actually it may be terrible, you know, nothing ventured, nothing gained. But then sometimes you check out a film and you think it's something like Saint Maud, the trailer's dropped today, and you're like, this is a fantastic film that me and you went to see. We were going to go see it anyway because it was an A24 film, but I like to believe I would have taken a chance on it and then gone to see it anyway. So it's one of these ones, I think it kind of helps you just focus what you're watching. It makes you conscious of, what are you choosing to go see? What films are you supporting? Are you actually just supporting films directed by white men, and can you improve upon that? Can you make the quality of what you're watching that bit more diverse? And I think it just makes you reflect a little bit in terms of what you're doing, and I think that can be a really good thing when it's easy to just pick any old thing or just rewatch the same things again on Netflix over and over.
Exactly, because we've spoken before, but there's this imbalance where people say, oh, subtitle films, I don't want to go watch a subtitle film, I don't want to spend time reading a film or whatever, and they're immediately shutting themselves down to some of the best sort of cinema they'll see in the world. You know, everyone's raving about Parasite at the moment. Everyone's basically saying it's the best film of the year. You saw it last night at the Odeon Screen Unseen. Unfortunately, because I don't have an Odeon Aberdeen, I will probably be about the last person to see it when it eventually comes out in February. But, you know, there's been some other fantastic foreign language films out there, and, you know, just across the years, you know, In the Mood for Love, you know, Pan's Labyrinth, you know, all these sort of things that people might not want to go and see because they've got subtitles and that puts them off. And you've got to wonder if there is a similar sort of unconscious gender bias towards, oh, I'm not going to go see that because it's directed by a woman, you know. In terms of blockbuster franchises, you know, it's taken so long. You know, Wonder Woman, so last year was like the first one that was directed by a woman. You know, Marvel finally got round to having a female direct one of their movies, thankfully. You know, Black Widow is going to be directed by a woman, Kate Shortland, next year. And then I think it's Chloe Zhao's directing the Eternals as well. So we've got 2 coming next year. Rise of Skywalker, apparently the female second assistant director, second unit director, is the first female director that's worked on a Star Wars film, and this is after, you know, 11 films. So, you know, change is coming, although not really at the pace it should be. But, you know, I guess it's and unfortunately there's still this whole thing about, I guess, box office numbers. You know, if we look at Booksmart, you know, one of the funniest films of the year, one of my favourite films of the year. It just didn't seem to connect one reason or another at the box office, and people were blaming the fact, is Olivia Wilde going to get the same sort of opportunities? Again, like with Elizabeth Banks and the failure of Charlie's Angels, where people are saying, oh, is she going to be able to direct another movie? Whereas if you are a white man and you can have dud after dud after dud, box office failure after box office failure, yet you will still get to make loads of movies. Like, I haven't seen it yet, but a lot of people seem to have trashed Lucy in the Sky by Noah Hawley, and it didn't make much money at the box office, but he's already apparently being touted to being able to direct a Star Trek movie. And you just got to wonder, would that have happened if a woman had directed and had a box office failure? Would she be able to get the same choices again and again? So unfortunately that imbalance is still there, but we've got to hope that change is slowly but surely coming along.
Yeah, I hope so too. And I have no kind of grand thoughts about this podcast making any sort of major dent, but it's you just got to do your own little thing. It's like recycling in a way, isn't it? That you think, well, I'm going to take out my milk cartons, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do my little bit, and you just sort of have to hope that the people that are in charge, in terms of the corporations, the big wigs, etc., that have the real power of influence will do their parts as well. We have to be seen to be making an example as well. And I've said it before, I think, while we do touch on sort of the Marvel films and Star Wars, we will definitely talk about these films when they land. If you've got a platform, however big or small, you should do your own little thing to make people think, right, I haven't heard of that film, or I haven't done that, we should go check that out. And I think that's kind of a positive way to go and stuff like that. If someone checks out Saint Maud, or goes, Little Women, yeah, I'll give that a go and stuff. I thought I was maybe more focused on maybe more from my girlfriend or sister than me. Then that's a little bit done, and hopefully we can just make little changes here and there, and hopefully people like Sony, HBO, A24, Marvel, Disney, whoever will do their parts as well and make it easier for us to continue to find content to recommend and praise and watch, and for people that aren't white men like us to see themselves reflected in the filmmakers behind it.
Absolutely, because it's like you say. It's getting the audiences in to see these films. Yeah, I'm off to Little Women tonight. I've heard fantastic things about it. I was going because it's a Greta Gerwig film. Actually, actively, that's the main draw. The cast is fantastic, but it's main. I've never seen Little Women before, even though there's been multiple adaptations. Unfortunately, I just watched the Friends episode last night where Joey and Rachel are reading each other's books and putting them in the freezer, and she spoils the ending for them, and I'm like, oh, now this ending has now been ruined for me. Hopefully, I will have forgotten it by the time I get in tonight. But it's getting that brand recognition up and going to see it, and it's like the opportunity. It's like you say, it's making sure there's an audience there, because ultimately it will come down to the box office. I think I read that there's 5 films next year with a budget of over $100 million are being directed by women, so that is huge in itself. But of course, it's then making sure that people turn out to see these films. Obviously a lot of them will be franchise movies, so there's a built-in audience already, but it's finding the small films. And like you say, we'll do a regular episode about a Marvel film or a Star Wars film, but there's always that little segment at the end or somewhere in the show where we talk about a couple of films directed by women, and slowly by surely, we're getting the word out there. If you enjoy listening to Filibuster and you have been persuaded by us to check out one of the films that we've recommended, let us know what you've watched and if you enjoyed it. We'd be keen to know what and if there's something perhaps that we've missed this year that you would recommend, let us know and we can give it a shout out in the future, because I'm sure we'll be doing the challenge again next year, will we?
Yeah, I'll continue to do the challenge. I think this year I'm currently on 90. I would like to hit 100 before the end of the year. I've got a few iTunes rentals to get through, a few films to see at the cinema, so I'm hopeful I can hit that 100 mark. And I think our grand total we've still got 2 episodes to go, still 2 weeks to run. We are kind of sitting on 116 films have been recommended between me, you and Kim over 1 year's time, from things like a documentary about the Satanic Church to films that I never even realized were directed by a woman personally, like Big and Wayne's World, to, new releases like Late Night, High Life, Booksmart, films on streaming like Madeline's Madeline, Unicorn Story, to foreign language features like Raw, Mustang, to, LGBT films like Miseducation of Cameron Post, to action adventure like Zero Dark 30. We've kind of covered quite a lot. It's not just ticking off the usual names. We've really kind of pushed it all out. So I think we've done a hell of a lot of recommendations, and making sure to kind of spread the word and give people no excuses. Where you can find the film, whether it's on Netflix, whether it's Hulu. We've tried to kind of break the borders, as it were.
Absolutely. I mean, so out of curiosity, out of the ones that we've done this year, are there any in particular that stand out that you'd like to give a shout out to again? If they're like a top 3 or something like that you have.
A top 3 might.
I'm putting you on the spot
yes,
now.
I would say that I think the highlights of this year in terms of new films, I would have to say I really enjoyed. Let me get my list up here. Sorry, I closed it a second ago. So probably the highlights of the year. I mean, I kind of think one of the first ones we recommended was Abducted in Plain Sight. We actually had the director on to talk about that film, which was a treat. That I think the highlights for me would be Madeline by Josephine Decker. Booksmart, really love that one as well. Little Women, I'm going to touch on that just sort of shortly as well. And I would say The Souvenir as well, The Farewell. I've made the mistake. I'm going down a rabbit hole here, but yeah, I would say The Farewell, Booksmart, and Madeline's Madeline would be my top 3 of the year. What about for yourself?
I would have Booksmart and the Farewell in there as well. I think Aniara, which was co-directed by a woman, that was one of the sort of hidden gems, sort of one that I basically went to on the recommendation of others at the Edinburgh Film Festival, and it did get a small release in cinemas, and it's now available on Arrow Film Blu-ray in the UK. Honey Boy, I thought was fantastic. Really good film, not only from Shia LaBeouf, but I thought Alma Harrell is a director to watch in the future. And then I've got one more which I don't think we've really mentioned yet, because it is technically a film out next year, but I think I'll use that one as my recommendation for this week. I think. Well, I'll tease it out a little bit.
Yeah,
more.
That's a perfect segue. So, what is your recommendation of the week, Dallas?
Well, it was one which I'd meant to actually recommend about last month, because it was screening in a couple of places as part of the French Film Festival, but it would have to be Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which I don't think we both saw at the London Film Festival for one reason or another. I think because there were so many films directed by women at that festival, we actually didn't get around to giving it a shout out, knowing that it was coming out distributed by Curzon next year, I think in February. But it was just, I think, one of the most highly praised films. I think everyone we saw loved it, and it's very similar to sort of like Call Me by Your Name, but from a female perspective, about this woman looking back on the relationship she had with a woman she goes to do a portrait for because this woman's about to get married, but slowly through a little glance here or a touch there they begin to fall in love. And I said it was like Call Me by Your Name, but it could be called Paint Me by Your Numbers, and because they both actually, I was going to spoil it there. I'm not going to say it. But there are several similarities and themes running throughout why they're so similar, and I think it's being nominated for sort of best foreign language film and stuff like that at the moment. I think it will be a huge hit next year, and one that it's just impossible not to fall in love with when you see it.
Yeah, this is going to be in my top 10 of the year so far, unless there's a huge earthquake in the next few weeks. Yeah, I'm really excited to see this one again, and I had it in my mind, if it wasn't Parasite yesterday, that it would probably be Portrait of a Lady on Fire, and I would be very happy to see that one again. So really looking forward to catching that one in the new year. So mine, I'm going to keep it very brief because it's out next week and you will be seeing it in a few hours, and that's Little Women. So I've seen this film kind of luckily enough enough twice already. Showing
rubbing it in for
I
everyone.
know. So it
First class white man privilege.
it feels like everyone, because it feels like there was like preview BAFTA screenings last week, and then it was randomly added to the Cameos Christmas season early, and then it's the Cineworld preview tonight. I don't think there'll be anyone left to see it on Boxing Day at this moment, but I really enjoyed this one. When I caught it last month, I had never read the book. I knew sort of the one kind of big spoiler and stuff. I think it was from like The Simpsons and Friends, so I kind of knew that. And I kind of was like, when I watched it the first time, I was like, right, I was taken in. I was like, oh, this is a really good film. I'm not emotionally connecting with it, but this is really good. Great performances. This is a great film. I'm just not kind of necessarily in love with it, which is fine. And then I caught it again last week, and I took my girlfriend along to see it. And I was sitting there going, oh my God, I can't wait for it to get to this bit. Oh, this bit's coming up. This is really good. Or I was looking at my girlfriend when certain bits were coming up, or I was like, oh, my favourite character is Amy, played by Florence Pugh, and all these sorts of things. And I just, because I sort of enjoyed it as sort of this is a great bit of movie, I really enjoyed that. And then this time I was like, I went away with it and then really enjoyed it as an experience. And I think it's definitely, it went from like a 4 to a 4.5 for me between screenings. So yeah, Little Women, directed by Greta Gerwig. So that'll be out wide on Boxing Day if you have not seen it, which I find it hard to believe after tonight when you see it that you'll be the last person in the UK to finally see it.
Or if you have seen it and are fed up of your family by Boxing Day, you can always leave and go and see it again at the cinema. So yeah. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this because it caps the end of the year of Pugh, I think. Florence Pugh, I think she just got nominated today for London Critics' Choice Circle Awards for Best British or Irish Actress due to body of work for the year, and that included Fighting With My Family, Midsummer, and also Little Women. So I mean, she is probably hands down the actress of the year, I think, between those three performances, because they're so wildly different. And I'm really excited to see if the film lives up to the hype that I've heard so far. And thankfully I won't have as much hype and length of time before, unlike Parasite, where I've still got another couple of months to deal with all the hype that's coming out.
Absolutely. So thanks everyone for joining us for 199 episodes. We'll be back in 2 weeks for episode 200 as we look back on the decade and pick our favourite films. So thanks very much for listening. Have a wonderful Christmas and holiday, and we will see you in 2 weeks' time. Bye.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.
Welcome to